Hello, welcome to the Low-Code Café. This is episode number 186 for May 28, 2025. Today we're going to get into Google Drive automation in Plantain. Glad to have you with us. I am Dale Warner, Head of Support for Plantain. Today I'm hoping to demonstrate at least one way to connect Plantain workflows with Google Drive, and we'll do the Google service account setup, get the bearer authentication, the bearer token, and we'll do some file operations. So I think it ought to be an interesting presentation. Low-Code Cafe is an event that we do on Wednesdays at 10 a.m. Central Time. This is a monthly event, and we do demonstrations and hands-on coding. That's where we try to spend the most of our time, something technical that we can present and show you how to advance Plantain. We record all of these and put them on YouTube. So youtube.com/Plantain gets you to all of these 180, well, now it'll be 186 episodes. You can go to that channel, hit the subscription button, hit the alarm bell. You'll get notified when we post new episodes. Our agenda today is pretty simple. I'm going to do a brief from the trenches of support segment, and then we'll spend most of our time on the hands-on low coding. Do engage with us, though. We have a chat window, a Q&A, and so either of those are a way to get involved. If you need to ask a question, you can raise your hand. I can recognize you. You can be part of the program. After it's all over with, there's a feedback form, and that link will be on your clipboard before we stop. As I mentioned, this is one that we present monthly, and so the next live one is scheduled for June 25th. So let's get into from the trenches of support. Currently, we are the only version that we have fully released is version 1.26. It was released back in June of last year, so almost a year old. There's a lot of hotfixes that we've talked about over the course of these months, and but it is the only version that's in our official support until Windows. So if you're at a version earlier than 1.26, I encourage you to upgrade. And 1.26 is really the most stable and full-featured version that we have. So I would advise installing 126 and installing all the hotfixes. We'll come back to 127 in just a second. I have a system here that we use at every Low-Code Cafe where we take a look at the hotfixes. So under the updates section, there's the hotfixes tab. And so these are the hotfixes that have been released since the last time that we got together. There are 3 of them. And I'll try and tell you a little bit about those. For Automation Scheduler, the most recent version fixes an issue with misfire with time triggers. So the idea here is that depending on how you have your system configured, your DNN, the underlying system, can become inactive. We sometimes refer to it as go to sleep. And then when somebody hits your site, the site becomes active at that point. You usually notice it as a brief delay before your site becomes responsive, and then it's quite responsive. So when DNN goes to sleep, unless you've made other arrangements, the automation scheduler is not active either. And so if you have a time trigger, something that was supposed to fire in automation, since it's not awake, it doesn't fire. So this fix says that there's an option on misfire, and when the site wakes up, that if you have on misfire set to true, then the trigger will activate immediately. Been doing a little bit of work on our documentation at learn.plantanapp.com, and there is a documentation topic for this. Optional IIS settings to prevent the website from going to sleep. So that's in our Getting Started guide. So if you want to prevent the issue overall, you can follow the instructions that are there on that topic. So let's see. The next one is having a couple of fixes in our listings module. If you're using our calendar view, the calendar view previously did not honor the to portal times setting of displaying a column, and now it does. So if you are looking at a calendar and um, want to force that all of this everything is displayed in portal time, not user time, now it's honoring that. Another issue that was fixed for listings is having to do with pop-up displays. We've had some users that had issues where when they, with the last hotfix, that, or this one here, 52689, that when you opened it, when a pop-up opened, it didn't get refreshed with the content if you're passing something along on the query string. And now it's that issue is resolved. So if you're experiencing that, those would be good to install. This one, the PDF generator is was connected to a breaking change that we did in Search Boost back more than a month ago. And this is a security enhancement. It has a very low probability that you're linking directly to a PDF, and so it's very low chance that you've got any form of a breaking change that is going to bother you, but we do need to let you know that it's possible. So if you have any questions about whether or not this one is going to impact you, if you're doing uh, if you use Search Boost and together with PDFs, you're welcome to contact me on support, and we can cover whether that could be an issue for you. But almost certainly it's not. You can certainly just install it and test as well. So I would recommend all three of those. I mentioned that was hotfixes to 1.26. In 1.27, we have been working on our release candidate number 1. We are about to come out with release candidate number 2, I believe, as early as tomorrow. So this is where we fixed some issues that came up during the first one, and so hopefully we're release candidate number 2 will be out to install and test, and if there are no issues with that, then we'll move on to a full release of version 1.27. All right. Bring up we have this event that happens every Friday, this same hour, and so that's the Low-Code Campfire, and we'll put a link on the chat here in a minute for that. But this is an event that we get together and far more interactive format, discussing issues that you may be encountering with Plant an App, or things that you'd like to see within the product. It's just a general conversation that we hold every week, and we invite you to participate in that. I'm going to put all of these on the clipboard here on the chat. So take a look at the webinar chat. We'll get it out there. So these are all the links for the things that are going on in this episode. You can register in advance for the Low-Code Campfire. We also have the link to our YouTube channel, our community portal. That's a great place to get questions answered. It's our community, you as a whole, can help answer the questions that your fellow Plant an App coders come up with, but we watch that as well, and so it's the best of both worlds there. If you have a public question or things that aren't maybe directly just a kind of how-to place, it's a great place to get questions answered. And then there's a webinar feedback form if you want to give feedback on this webinar or things that you'd like to see, and next time you can use that link. Today, we're going to be talking about a lot of things having to do with Google, and so the link for the create a service account in Google would be something that might, if you're trying to follow along, might be useful. All right, let's get on to low-coding, the hands-on section. This is Google Drive. So the overview, what are we going to do? Well, we're trying to consume Google Cloud API services. There could be, we're going to take a look at in a minute of all the different things that Google Cloud offers. I'm going to focus in on Google Drive because it's a nice practical example, but there are so many services, and this techniques that we're going to see today at least should help you open up and be able to explore that. In order to do that, we have to do some Google setup, and then there's a um, there's a Plant an App add-on, the Google API module that we'll want to install in order to be able to get to take advantage of that. We'll be using our server request action to talk to Google API, and in order to do that, we need a bearer token. That's the security for Google. But once you have the bearer token, you can do lots and lots of those different services. Part of what we'll do today, since we're going to be focusing on Google Drive, is we'll create an empty Google Drive folder to interact with, and then once we get that far, we're going to be doing several things with the Google Drive API. We'll be getting a list of what's in the folder, being able to create or read or delete content within that folder. So whether you want to do this particular, work with Google Drive or just kind of understand how to interact with the Google Cloud services, this should be a good example for all of that. So the first part of this is, our goal. We're going to be consuming Google Cloud API services. If we take a look at this link here, the OAuth 2 scopes for Google Cloud, this is a nice big listing from Google that kind of gives a sense of the kinds of things that are available. Let's let it get loaded up here. There we all are. So as I mentioned, we're going to be focusing on the Google Drive API. And so the scopes is part of, if you want to set up your account so that you have kind of minimal security, just the minimum that you need to do the work that you want your automation to do. This gives you an idea of the scopes that are available. And we're going to, for convenience sake, we're going to avoid locking it down to the minimum. We're going to do an owner scope so that we can just don't get impeded by security today. But be aware that these scopes exist, and so as you're setting up your account, you can choose what rights you want to give to it. This link here at the top, the Google Drive API, I'm going to make sure you have this link. I'm not certain if I put it on there, so I'm going to put that on the webinar chat as well. But this link up at the top will take you to the Google Drive API, and so this is the area where you can learn for Google Drive all the different things that are available and how to call the different APIs. So, for example, with the Google Drive API, it gives you the overview and some quick starts and how to do different things. So what you can do with it and related topics. And so if we want to manage files and folders, which is what we're going to do, each of these explores the calls that you'll make to do that. Now, one of the things I'll just mention here at the start is that as you read into this, there's support for a lot of different languages. You'll see a lot of different how to call and perhaps samples in Python or PHP or whatever. Sometimes there'll be ones in HTTP, but I'll just point out that as a strategy, if you're trying to do something particular, we're doing HTTP connections using the server request, and sometimes some of the examples don't cover that very well in the Google documentation, but I advise that using ChatGPT, for example, will help you navigate exactly how to call it using our server request operation. So if it's not plain in the documentation together with GPT is very helpful. And a lot of at least one of the examples I'll show you here in a minute was heavily reliant on working with GPT to help me get the call correct. Anyway, so those are the resources that are available. I'm going to close that out and move back. So to all of that, having a bearer token is the key to accessing all those services. So that's really the main thing that we want to get started with first. In order to do that, we need to do some setup in Google Cloud, and that's in our Google Cloud Service account. And now I'm going to need my own hyperlink here that I posted earlier. So let's find that one. So let's get into that. This is the same one that I put on the clipboard. I'll just mention that in one of our earlier episodes, number 171, I did some of the setup on this. Did a We were doing OAuth authentication, and that's a different service from Google Cloud, and we set up a project, and so I'm reusing the project that I set up on that day. This is our. You also want to make sure what account you're signed into, and so I'm making sure I'm on my Plant and App account here. And so that was we had a project, and I'm just reusing it today. Cafe 171 Live is the project, but you have to have a project, and we're going to be setting up a service account. So in our steps here, we want to create a service account, and I'm going to, as I mentioned, give it the owner role, and that has security implications. It's going to be wide open, but let's do that. So we're going to create a service account. Service account name is going to be uh, I'm going to be putting all of these examples into our Campfire website. That's where I'm going to be working today. So that's why I'm going to call this Campfire Google Access to remind me when I'm looking at this account in Google where it's in use. Um, if you're part of the Low-Code Campfire group, you'll be able to access the Campfire website and see all these examples and exactly how they're configured. So that's another great reason why you might want to go there. But anyway, I'm doing double duty today. I'm creating them in our Campfire site so that they're visible to you for a later time. So I'm going to create this service account, and it's asking me about permissions, and I am going to pick the owner role. That's so it's full access, and yeah, you might want to use the least security principal, least necessary security principal, but I'm just going to open it wide open and continue. And I don't need principals, and so I'm going to say done. And so now we have this new item, and it has no keys. I'm going to check my notes here. So the next thing I want to do is manage keys, and I want to add a key and get the JSON. So let's see if it's here. Uh, Manage keys. And I'm going to add a key, create a new one. And this is going to be a the result that we want is a JSON key. We're going to need that in a minute, so I'm going to say create, and it automatically is going to download a file for me that has all that content. So that's really the thing that we need to do the work. I'm going to open that up. And I'll show it to you, or a little bit of it. What the result is a JSON file that has these information, the type, the project key, the private ID, a private key, and this is cut off so you can't see it. So it's not a security problem for me to be showing you this. But this is what you would expect, all this content, and we're going to need that in a minute. So I'm just going to set it aside and we'll come back to it. So that's it. We've got our service account and we've got keys and we can move on. The next thing that we need to do is to install the Plant and App Google API tool, which is in configuration updates add-ons. So we're going to be doing our work here, as I mentioned, in Low-Code Campfire. Or campfire.plantandapp.com. We're already signed in, so I can go to configuration. And in the updates section, we can find this add-on. So here it is, Google Cloud Integration, and we'll just install it. So that'll take a minute to do, but it shouldn't be too long. Let's go on and take a look at the next step while we're doing that. So the next thing that we're going to do, and this one really is the key to the whole episode, the workflow to get a bearer token. We'll have the Google API that we're just installing has an action that'll help us get the bearer token. It's pretty easy to do once that's set up. So we'll get the bearer token. Once we have a valid bearer token, then any of the Google API services that JSON, those managed keys are authorized for, will be able to work. And then we have a standard pattern that we recommend where you return the bearer token using our tokens mechanism. It makes it nice and easy to consume, and so for you as a developer, and then it handles caching, being able to use the same bearer token for a period of time. So let's see if I've stalled long enough. So if you haven't seen it before, after installing an add-on, those now show on our update screen. And so here on the overview, we look on the updates. We'll let this get refreshed, but we now see that we have Google Cloud Integration installed and the version number for that particular module. So we're ready to go. So we're moving on now to doing a workflow in order to get this bearer token. Let's see my site. So that'll be in our workflows section, and we'll do a new workflow. And if you'll bear with me just a second, I'm going to try and keep everything with the same name so as my development site. So let me look that up. Alrighty. So I'm going to just put this in I'll create a workspace for this, or a namespace, and I'm going to call it Google Services. I'm going to call it Google Cloud. So everything we do today, we'll put in Google Cloud, and that just helps segregate it. So we'll save that change and select it. So now see it says Google Cloud here. The workflow that we're going to be creating is going to be called get Google Bearer. All right. And the process for this really is pretty straightforward. We're going to use the action. If we scroll down and look at our Google API, this is what we just installed, and so it gave us this new action called Get Google Authorization Bearer Token. Pretty straightforward. And we just need to do some fill in the blanks to make this work. So the main thing that you need to do is this Google service account. We need to manage the credentials. Now, this is our old style of managing credentials, and at some point this may turn into a connector that's available, our newer style, but this is the older style. So we'll do the work here. And so we're going to create a new group that's going to be, and we'll give it a name. It's going to be called Google Cloud. You can call this anything you want, but I'm going to call it Google Cloud, and then I'm going to create a credential entry, and I'm going to call this the um, can't file credentials, and see where it says service account JSON. That's where we need that JSON that we had a minute ago. So I'm going to grab that off my other window and paste it here. And saves just that whole JSON from start to finish goes in there, and that gives us the um, credentials. So now back to our action, the get Google authorization token, we can pick Google Cloud and Campfire credentials as our entry. And now that set of credentials is associated with this action. Here's where you can specify Google scopes. And we want to that was off the list of scopes that we talked about the very first document from Google. We want the Google API's drive scope, and we're going to fill in an output token name, and that's going to be called Google Bearer. So if we're configured correctly, Google Bearer should have everything we need to do the security. I am going to end my workflow, and I'm going to output Google Bearer. So Google Bearer is my output, and I'm just going to fill it with the Google Bearer value. So let's save and test this and see if it's working. We hit run, we get this nice long token. So this will do the security to get content interact with Drive. So this is, again, the main thing that we needed. And you'll notice that every time we run this, we get a different one. So let's, for example, this ends in PMZ69. If we run it again, it ends in something else. Each time it's doing this request out to Google and getting a different token. So this is where using a workflow token helps to standardize and make it, but it makes it easier to use, but also makes it where the same token can be reused. My research indicates that these tokens last an hour, and so being able to use the same token throughout your website for that hour saves some calls to Google. So I am going to create a new in the tokens area. We'll create a new namespace called Google. And I I'm going to say it's available on all portals. That's handy for me. Just that's my default, making it so that if we happen to have another portal, this would still be accessible. And so now we have the Google namespace, and we'll create our first token, and I'm going to call it the bearer token. The definition of this is going to be a run workflow, and the workflow that we're going to run is the one we just created. So we're going to say get Google Bearer, and the value that this is going to get is the output from that other one. I'm going to, well, let's demonstrate. I'm going to leave the cache alone for a second. So we'll just save and test this. And so now this token, Google:bearer token, gives us a token. And this one, notice, ends in SEU. If I run it again and go to the bottom, it ends in something else, UVQ. So it's not being cached, and so every time you used this token, you would get a new one. I'm going to go up to our token cache and change it to 300. I'm a little conservative, although this is seconds, so this will be a 5-minute one. So now we do save and test. It runs it after having updated it. So now notice that if we look at the ending of this, it ends in R1 HP. If we run the same token again, it still ends in R1 HP. So now we have it cached. So any place that's using this Google Bearer token will, if uh, if there is a cached value, you're going to return that and it doesn't talk to Google at all. If there's not a cached value, it runs the workflow and gets a token and returns it. Either way, when you use Google Bearer token, you're going to get a Google Bearer token. It's just automatically going to either uh, re, uh, get one or reuse the last one. So that's kind of a nice pattern. All right, so now we are into, let's see where we are. We've done these two tasks on our workflows where we um, gotten our bearer token and we have a token to return it. The next step we'll just do where I'm going to create a drive folder that's shared with everyone. Again, I'm going with a minimal security scenario so that we can do this without trying to work through security issues as well. We'll just try and work through it. So I've got drive.google.com open, and I have this folder structure of public shared files, and I'm going to create a new one, a new folder, and it's going to be called Campfire Shared. It doesn't matter what we call it, but we'll get it created here, and then I am going to share it with everyone. So this is anyone with the link can edit. So this is full permissions. Anything that's in this folder can be viewed by anyone. It's just a very low security scenario. When we go into that, it has you'll see Google Drive. It's an empty folder, but it has a folder ID here at the end, and that number is going to be or that ID is what we're going to be using to interact with the API services. So we'll come back to that here in a minute. The first thing, so this is just, a place to store the information. So now we get into the Google Drive section, all the different things we're going to interact with. The first thing that we're going to do is get Google Drive files. We want to be able to get a directory listing, what's in this folder. So to make this kind of, yeah, to make this kind of useful, I am going to create a Google Doc here, and it's going to be a blank document. We're going to just, it'll just be this is a test document. And I'm just going to let it defaulted to this is a test. So now when we look in um, our shared folder, we have a this is a test document. So this will be our first um, task. Let's get a directory listing and see if this is a test shows up. Um, so back to our working area, we're going to create a workflow that gets that done. So let's write a workflow. This is going to go in our Google namespace so that everything is easily findable. So we'll select that. The workflow that we're going to create is going to be get Google Drive files. This is going to take as input a folder ID. And this is a text type, so that's fine. So that we don't have to type that, I'm going to provide that while we're testing as the value. So I'm going back to Google Drive and getting the folder ID, and I'm going to provide that as the default value for this. So when we run it interactively here, we have something nice to test with, and yeah, that's good. For our process, we're going to use a server request. So in this version, it's still called server request experimental. This is going to be the starting in version 127, this is the new server request action, and the old one will be server request obsolete. So using server request experimental, if you have a current use, that's a new thing to do. That'd be the right one to use. So what we're going to do is the title of this is Get My Drive Files. Doesn't matter what we call it, but just try and make it be something that makes sense. And then I'm going to copy and paste the input parameters here, and we'll just explain them. We're going to be copying the Google Drive, we're going to be calling the Google Drive, Google APIs Drive version 3 files. So this is coming from the documentation and working with ChatGPT. We're going to be doing a query saying, I want only the stuff in my folder ID. And this folder ID is going to be the one that's coming in from our input parameters. So this workflow is going to be able to be used with any number of folders, but we pass it the folder ID. And then there's some recommended parameters here where we're saying things that are in parents. I don't remember what that one's about. But then the fields that we want is everything having to do with files. So we want the ID, the name, the MIME type, the parents, the owners, the permissions, all these fields that are part of the uh, view. And so um, and then there's this incomplete search parameter, which I don't recall what that is either. So again, your mileage may vary. You may want to use different settings, but this was aimed at revealing as much as we possibly could from this. And then this uh, is a get. So the HTTP method is get. We don't need to pass any data. Um, and now we get to the part of how do we get Google to know that we're authorized to get this information? How do we pass that? And so what we're looking for is the headers, and we're going to pass an authorization. So this is a requirement for Google to pass an authorization, and we have to pass the word bearer. And then we need to pass that token that we created earlier, which I think I have on my clipboard. So maybe I could just, yeah, there it is. So that's the workflow token that we created. And so it's going to go get that big long token and send it on to Google. And then the last thing that we need is an output token, and I'm going to call it the drive files. And that's it. So get my drive files, just one action in here, and then I'm going to output that token as well, also calling it drive files. So let's save and test. The folder ID is the one that we previously set up as the default, so we can just click run, and we get a nice long output uh, from Google. That's a nice successful output, and I'm going to find a JSON viewer that we can use to take a look at it. So I'm just kind of copy and paste all that out, and this Notepad++ has the ability to format JSON quite nicely. So we see we get an array of files, and then there's only one file in there. It's got a lot of stuff with it, but um, it has an ID, it has a modified time, it has this is a test as its name, so we know what it's called, who owns it, um, where the parent folder, so if we needed to walk backwards to a parent folder, all the permissions, and um, anyone with the link can write. So we see that this is just all the permissions set up to it. And then there's this web view link. So if you wanted to open the file, that would be the one you'd use. So we have all these nice outputs that so we're now getting the files. And then just to kind of demonstrate, if we go back to Google Drive and delete this, we'll move it to the trash, and now run the same workflow to get my drive files, we should get nothing. Yeah, so we get this much smaller array. There aren't any files. So we kind of proved that this is nicely interacting with Google. Uh, I, I'm going to do a check here, just if there's any questions so far. This is a fine time to ask a question. Otherwise, I'll move on. So our next step is that we want to create a text file. And I went through quite a bit of experimentation to get this one to work. But the idea is I just want to send some text and get it created into this folder. And this isn't a Google Doc or a sheet. It's just a file that's stored in Drive. And so we're going to create a text file. And so let's get that done. So this is a different workflow. We'll do a new workflow. And I'm going to yeah, workflow again with the Google Cloud namespace. And I think all of these are one action workflows. I'm going to just copy this name from here. This is what we're going to create. So we'll give it the name. Doesn't matter what we call it. So for inputs to this one, we're going to have three things. We got to tell it where to put it. So this is going to be folder ID. And again, we're going to want it to go to our folder ID that we've been playing with. So I'm going to put that folder ID there. And then what do we want to call it? We're going to have it called the text file name. So we'll add that there. And in my case, we're just going to say my file.txt. Doesn't matter what we call it, but that will be the default for easy testing. And then we're going to have text content. And I'm going to make this one a large text so that we can pass a lot of stuff to it. And for now, I'm just going to put this is test content. Now notice I put that on 2 lines so that we can see that line breaks are respected. So we have text content, text file name, and folder ID. So if we call this workflow, it's going to create a file. That's the idea. The process for this is that we are going to run a PowerShell script. So most things would be done, lots of things can be done with a server request, but this one, there's enough complexity in creating a file that we needed to run a PowerShell script, and I will again paste this in from my setup. We'll do a little explanation for it, so I'll come back to that in just a second. And when it does this, the output that we're going to get is Google output. And so that'll be our output in a second. And so let's just close that off and then go back and explain the PowerShell script. Let's see if I can get this nicely centered. So this is setting some values. So we're setting the bearer token. We're creating a variable that's called boundary123. We're the URL that we're calling is again this Google API is upload to drive, and we're uploading a multi-part file. That's the difficulty of this. The multi-part file wasn't transferring very well in our standard server request action. We're going to be targeting folder ID, so that's the input parameter folder ID. I forgot to mention this is our bearer token, again, our same token to run the workflow to get our bearer token. Folder ID, we have our text content is going to be assigned to the value to the variable file content. We've got some metadata here that we're passing that is the file name that's coming in from input. It's going to be a text plain folder from Google's perspective. It's going to be, its parent is going to be the folder ID that we're getting here. And then we have this multi-part definition that defines what needs to be sent to Google. So we're passing the content type and this content type plain and the file contents. And so a little bit of experimentation was necessary to make this happen. And so then once everything was all set up, we are invoking the invoke a REST method and passing all this data to it. Again, all this is going to be out on campfire.planetapp.com, and you can follow along there. So let's try this out. We have if we're doing it right, currently we have an empty folder. We're going to run save and test. We've got the folder ID 1du scv, 1du scv. We're going to create myfile.txt, and it's got some content. We hit run. The output comes back from Google, and it says that it told us what kind was created, the ID of what was created, the name, and what it was. If we look in Google Drive, and we'll have to refresh here to get it to come up. That was anticlimactic. There it is. Myfile.txt got created. If I click in on it, it shows that this is test content. Whatever we sent got sent there, so that's good. So now back to our earlier workflow, and I'm going to filter by my namespaces here, Google Cloud. So we have this get Google Drive files one. we can run it again with that default folder, and now we can see that this file that we created is present and find out all the information we need on it, including its ID, things like that. So all the way it's set up, and it's myfile.txt. So now we have two workflows that are running well, and so we can move on to the next one. The next one is going to be about actually getting that content down. So we're going to do Google Drive get file is a workflow that we'll create. So let's get that done. And the only thing that we need for this is a file ID. And actually, I didn't grab the file ID yet, so let's go figure out what the right file ID is that we need. So we're going to go to workflows and run this, get our drive files, what's in here. So the ID of this thing is here in the JSON. So in our testing, we can just default this to that file so that we can find our file. Make it easy for us to test. The process that we're going to do here again is just a simple server request. And we'll call this get file. Again, I'm going to copy and paste. It's pretty straightforward, the API call. So we're calling the Google API's drive v3 files for the file ID that we want, and alt media is the um, correct call for this. Again, your miles may vary. You're going to have to do some experimentation on exactly what parameters to pass, but this is a get, and again, we don't need to pass any data. And but we do need the headers. So let's do that. Otherwise, it would fail on security. As a matter of fact, let's take a look at what that would be like if you forgot to do the headers. And the output again is going to be called Google Output. So we'll save that and paste from our clipboard here, Google Output. And so whatever Google gives us back, that's what we'll display. So let's save and test this. So we get an error forbidden. The request is missing a valid API key. So it's telling us right exactly what the problem is. So that's the header. And so we'll fill in that blank here. We got to find where to put it, headers. And what we need is the authorization header and our bearer token. And so now see the content is just very nice. This is test content, exactly what the file says. We're getting that back from Google. Just for illustration purposes, we have this. I'm going to save and test run it again. I'm going to intentionally give it a bad file ID just to see what kind of error we get back. So we get back a not found error. So if we don't give it a good file ID, you're going to see an error or something like this, and may need to bring that into consideration for your work. Okay. The last one that I wanted to do, and I'm going to show you actually. We'll do the Google Cloud namespace. We just did this Google Drive get file. The next one we want to do is a Google Drive delete file. And it's very similar to this other one that we already have. So I'm just going to duplicate that. So it's a nice technique to do. The inputs of this is sorry, let's get the name of it first here. So it starts out calling it the copy, but we're going to call it delete file. All right. So it's going to use the same thing. It needs a file ID. From a process standpoint, it's only doing one server request. And so the server request will change the title of this thing to delete file. And um, the query that we're doing is this same drive v3 files. We don't even need this part of it anymore, but we do need, instead of a get method, we're using a delete method. This, again, all comes from the API documentation. And because we duplicated it, we have our authorization here already there. We still have Google output already there. So if we run this delete file, so let's just stop and see where we are here. In Google, we have this myfile.txt. We save and test this. We've used this, previously had this file ID that got copied over also. So we're just going to run it. We get an output that's blank. But now let's see if it worked. Let's go ahead and refresh. This should get rid of the file. Good. So now just to kind of summarize where we are and what could be next. Yeah, I wanted our Google namespace. So we wrote a workflow that got the bearer token. We've got these different ways to interact with Google Drive, so we can get the files in a particular folder, any folder we have access to from that service account. We can create a file, get the file, delete the file. So nice interaction with Google Drive. All this is out here to take a look at from the Campfire website. Probably a nice next step that we just ran out of time for, but you could now send any content to Google Drive as a text file. So if we did a workflow that was to create a user list and just gives a list of usernames and user IDs, for example, and built that up in a token by doing a for each through a list and then building up a token, you could call our create text with PowerShell workflow and pass that as you'd pass the folder ID, the whatever name you wanted to call it, and that content, and it would create that file. So nice, powerful way to create content out on a Google Drive. And then, as a final thought, this is, hopefully you're encouraged enough to know that you have the power to interact with Google. So now it would be possible for you to look in those APIs, and I know there's a photo API, there's a Google Docs, a Google Sheets. There's many, many services that you could consume just using that API key. So if there are any questions, great time for that. Otherwise, I'll give it a minute and then we'll end out our session today. While you're thinking about that, just as a reminder, this will be recorded. This is recorded. We'll put it out on YouTube later on this afternoon, so you'll be able to go into playback and see how to put together these different pieces and make that go. Great. Since there are no questions here, I'll also remind you that Low-Code Campfire in 2 days at 10 a.m. Central will talk about this and many other things. So encourage you to join us and be part of that as well. So with that, I will say happy low coding. We will see you again at both Low-Code Campfire and another episode of Cafe coming up likely in 1 month. Talk to you all soon.